I want to start by saying that I don't have the best relationship with my mom. I have an older sister, and growing up my mom always tended to control me and tried to override any decisions I make, saying that I was young and naive and she always knew better. I cut contact with her for a few months after she tried to get involved in my marriage. My husband and I've been together for 3 years, and he has always been telling me to be more gentle with my mom. I had a miscarriage a few days ago. It's devastating and I really thought it'll get easier, but I'm still feeling excruciating pain and frustration. We were happy and excited, but all that disappeared suddenly, and it was hard for me to take because I thought everything was fine. I didn't tell anyone, especially since I'm currently dealing with some health issues. I didn't tell anyone in the family. My husband promised not to tell until I'm ready. My mom kept asking me questions and brought up my pregnancy constantly, and my answers were short. Because I didn't want her to know, since she'd call everybody and let them know. She's always like this, that's why I tend to keep things private. I decided to not visit for a couple of days, hoping she'd stop asking questions. Then I found out on FB that my mom announced my miscarriage on her page, and I didn't know about that. I was shocked. I freaked out when I started getting calls from family members, and I have no idea how many people knew about it. I was so mad to the point of shaking. Everyone kept berating me for not telling them. I called my mom and I yelled at her. She defended herself, saying that she was just looking for support and that I should have told her about it first time she asked what was wrong. I asked her who told her, and she said she had a talk with my doctor, but I shouldn't be mad because she's my mom and she had the right to know what's going on. I argued with her about getting involved in my personal life and disregarding my feelings and cutting me off guard like that. I went to the doctor and I lashed out at her for releasing my private medical information to my mom and causing me to deal with everyone asking why I was hiding my miscarriage from them, even though I was just waiting for the right time. I told my doctor that I was going to file a complaint against her the same day, since she didn't respect my privacy, and decided to give my mom information about my medical records. My mom heard and started berating me, saying it wasn't the doctor's fault and that she was a friend of hers she knew years ago, but I didn't know about it. She said that I went too far and acted like my family were strangers. She said that she's my mom and I didn't need to overreact like that. All I needed was time and space. Now I have to deal with all this stress and I'm a mess right now. My brother texted me a few minutes ago and said he wants to come over and talk to me. He was the first to call me and berated me and said that I was being hostile towards everyone for no reason. I haven't replied to his text yet, but I don't want to see anyone right now. I can't take one more word from them. I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to, very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem, and though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me. He had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask, which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. Two things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single, and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple, and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end, I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action, seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer. Or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days. And his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated. My brother-in-law, Sammy, lost his home shortly after his divorce 10 months ago. He moved in with us and brought his twin daughters, Olivia and Sloane 18, with him a couple of months ago. His sister, my wife, and I have one daughter, Zoe 16, and she and her cousins aren't close but get along fine. Olivia and Sloane have no respect for Zoe's privacy, none. They used to walk into her room and take everything they get their hands on. Makeup, phone accessories, clothes, school laptop, etc. Zoe complained a lot, and I've already asked the girls to respect Zoe's privacy and stop taking things. My wife and Sammy saw no issue with this. After all, they're girls and this typical teenage girl's behavior. I completely disagreed. Last straw was when Zoe bought a $60 M.A.C makeup kit that looks like a paint set that she saved up for over a month, and one of the girls, Sloane, took it without permission and ruined it by mixing shades together while using it. Don't know much about makeup, but that's what Zoe said when she found the kit on her bed, and was crying. I told my wife and she said she'd ask Sloane to apologize, but I got Zoe a lock after I found she was moving valuable belongings out the house because of this incident. Sammy and his daughters saw the lock and weren't happy. The girls were extremely upset. Sammy asked about it and I straight up told him. He said, "My daughters aren't thieves. It's normal that girls of the same age borrow each other's stuff." He said Zoe could easily get another makeup kit for $15 from Walmart and shouldn't even be buying expensive adult makeup in the first place, and suggested my wife take care of this defect in Zoe's personality, trying to appear older than she is. He accused me of being overprotective and babying Zoe with this level of enablement. I told him this between me and my wife, but she shamed me for putting a lock on Zoe's door for her cousins to see and preventing them from spending time with her, saying I was supposed to treat them like daughters. Then demanded I remove it, but I said this lock does not get removed till her brother and his daughters are out of our house. She got mad I was implying we kick them out and said her family'll hate me for this. So I reminded her that I let Sammy and his family move, in which something her own family refused to do, so she should start with blaming them for not taking their own son and niece's granddaughters in. If it wasn't for her family's unwillingness to help, we wouldn't be dealing with this much disturbance at home. Everyone's been giving me and Zoe silent treatment, and my wife is very much upset over this. A while back, my brother married a woman who had an 11-year-old son named Billy. A year later, my sister-in-law gave birth to a little girl. 2 years later, she gave birth to a boy. Billy, who was 14 by this time, was treated like an outsider. My sister-in-law and brother saw him as a burden who spoiled their picture-perfect family. If you asked my sister-in-law how many kids she had, she would say 2. Billy started acting out. He got involved with a bad group of kids and started getting into trouble. He started failing all of his classes. He eventually got into drugs and was suspended from school. My brother and sister-in-law were fed up with him. I asked my brother if Billy could spend the summer with me and my husband. We have a hobby farm, and I thought maybe getting away from his life for a while could help him some. Well, they were more than happy to get rid of him, my SIL's words. It was kind of rough the first few weeks. He had a lot of anger issues. But my husband kept his hands and mind busy doing work on the farm. And we both made sure that he knew he was loved and wanted. By August, he was a totally different kid. He wanted to keep living with us, but my sister-in-law insisted that he come home. After 2 months, he went back to his old ways due to his parents' indifference. They ended up sending him back to us, and he lived with us throughout high school. He ended up being an A/B student and kept with a really great group of kids. He got involved in baseball and got a scholarship to a local university. He's 22 now and is in his last year of school. He's engaged to a really great girl. When he was 16, he started calling me mom, and he started calling my husband pops. He never really had much to do with his mom, and he had nothing to do with my brother. He saw them on holidays when the whole family came over. His mom has tried to have a relationship with him the past few years, but he has avoided her. On Christmas, sister-in-law was over, and for whatever reason, she opened my desk drawer and found a birthday card from Billy where he said, "To the best mom ever. Thanks for loving me and giving me a chance." She was devastated. She ended up texting Billy, confronted him and asked him if she would be presented as mother of the groom at his wedding. He told her that he no longer considered her his mom and wasn't even sure if he wanted her at the wedding at all. My sister-in-law is now insisting that I make it clear to Billy that I am not his mother and that he is not to refer to me as such. My brother is also very upset with me. Even my parents are pressuring me to do what sister-in-law wants for the sake of peace. Honestly, I consider Billy to be my son. I count him in with all of my children. I feel like telling Billy not to present me as mother of the groom could possibly be misinterpreted as me saying that I don't feel like he's my son and I don't even want to take a chance of that happening. If he decides to present his real mom as mother of the groom, I will 110% support him. I have zero desire to tell Billy not to call me mom, and I absolutely won't do it because I know it would destroy him, and it would kill me. My sister-in-law insists that by not doing it, I'm making it impossible for her to have a relationship with him and I'm being selfish. I have talked to Billy about it some. He doesn't like to talk about his mom at all. He basically just said that he doesn't see her as a mom and has for sure decided he doesn't want her at the wedding. I understand and respect that.